So much news today, but let's start with this. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora is launching with FSR 3 frame generation, and early reviews are saying that it is way better than the implementation that was seen in Immortals of Avium and Forspoken, which were the only two games to have this technology up until now. This looks like the frame generation fully baked that we all wanted when those games launched. Now, I was overall pleasantly surprised with how well frame generation could work in those games, but it had some major caveats. The main thing being that if you did not VSync locked to your monitor's max refresh rate, the frame pacing was completely thrown off, and it did not have proper variable refresh rate support. So with those two issues, it meant that actually using frame generation easily and effectively was honestly kind of a disaster. Now, when you would get it locked into place, the actual generated frames looked pretty good. But that was a big problem, making it much less easy to use than Nvidia's competing frame generation technology. However, it's looking like this implementation in Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora has reportedly just solved those problems. Now, I initially saw this in this WCCF Tech article, but they are referencing testing from the German outlet Computer Base. So I have been pouring through their review of Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora on PC, and it has tons of great stuff in it, and I will link all of my sources in the video description today. And this is, just kind of Google translated from the original German. But overall, they are extremely positive about it. They said they were very negative about the initial implementation in, like I said, in Immortals of Avium and Forspoken. But they're just saying that this is much better, just much better. So basically, they're saying that it completely solves the issue of requiring VSync to be enabled, and that it works properly with variable refresh rate. They're saying variable refresh rate works as it should, and whether VSync is on or off no longer plays a role in how the game feels. So that is absolutely huge. And they're saying that frame pacing overall looks quite good and significantly better than what we were getting in those previous games, where they're showing here a graph of a frame time chart of the 7900 XTX running FSR quality versus FSR quality plus frame generation. And you can see that overall, you get more frames per second, which is a lower time between frames, and overall the frame time graph looks pretty smooth. A couple little spiky bits here and there. But they did a ton of testing, and I don't want to spoil all of it, but how about the latency? If their latency testing is correct, then actually it's reducing latency to enable frame generation, which just seems wrong, because if you are interpolating two frames, then you have to delay showing a frame in order to interpolate the frame between it, which is how these technologies work. And using an LDAT sensor, which basically you strap a little photon-sensitive device to the screen, you measure mouse input, and then how long does it take for, you could measure like a muzzle flash, or basically for the game screen to respond to whatever your input was. Now, one downside to this type of testing is you can't do it in motion, so you kind of have to be on a static image, which may or may not be perfectly representative of the game in motion, but that's how this kind of has to work. So click to photon latency of the entire system. Did some interesting measurements here. And look, the 7900 XTX FSR super resolution quality with frame generation has a 48.1 millisecond latency, whereas their 7900 XTX FSR super resolution quality with no frame generation measured 54.6 milliseconds of latency. So they're actually showing a slight latency reduction by enabling frame generation on the AMD GPU, whereas the Nvidia GPU actually showed more of what would be expected, which is a slight increase in latency by enabling frame generation, although it was only about 3 milliseconds, which is not a lot of extra latency introduced into the scene. So that is certainly interesting. They're also seeing that frame rate-wise, the AMD graphics card boosted a bit more frames off of the frame generation technology. So it did seem to work a bit better on the AMD card, but still worked well on the 4080. And again, I thought that was super interesting. Now, the only thing I could think of that would make sense as far as actually reducing latency by enabling frame generation is they do say that their frame generation technology does have some kind of latency reduction built into it. And so perhaps if you're just using the normal super resolution, the latency reduction thing that's going on in their frame generation isn't enabled. And in this case, it's actually able to make up so much of the latency difference by turning that on that it not only makes up for the frame generation lag, and then some. So that's certainly very interesting. Not only that, they're also claiming that the FSR upscaling in the game looks very good, especially in scenes that this game is full of, which would typically be a very, very difficult and usually pretty bad result for FSR upscaling. Again, we're talking about upscaling now, not the frame generation technology. Generally, AMD's upscaling technology struggles on things like dense foliage, which this game is absolutely full of. And I'll send you over to the Computer Base article. I don't want to steal all of their information. They're super in-depth. They tested a bunch of GPUs in the game. They have a bunch of side-by-side comparisons. These are really great side-by-sides because you can actually manually zoom in and out, but it's not just still screenshots. A lot of times upscaling technologies struggle the most in motion. So these are actually little 10-second video clips that you can play as well as zoom in, zoom out. And if you prefer, full screening it, you can go to split screen and scroll back and forth side by side. This is DLSS performance versus FSR performance. So I'd really like you guys to take a look at this, but they say, well, they do still think that DLSS upscaling does have the edge. This game had a lot of stuff in it that generally FSR would struggle with, and it did a pretty good result. And so in general, it's sounding like this game has a very good FSR implementation. And I'd certainly like to test this out myself, so I have pre-ordered the game. I don't have review access to it, so it unlocks in a few hours. So hopefully I'll have a video, guys, out for you guys tomorrow, at least playing around a little bit with it. We'll see how much time I have to do. I'm a teacher. This is still the school week and all that. But anyway, take a look at Computer Base's article for some full details and image quality and all of that. But I'm very interested to see if my findings match theirs on how good frame generation operates in Frontiers of Pandora. Now, in other big AMD news, in the driver release that came with the day one driver for Frontiers of Pandora, they also add HYPR-RX Eco mode, hardware accelerated GPU scheduling support, and a UI update. This all sounds interesting, including the Eco mode, and I've talked about hardware accelerated GPU scheduling in a previous video. But also, apparently, this driver has improved, even when you're not using this Eco mode thing, but in general, it has fixed some of the idle power usage issues that AMD's 7000 series GPUs have been struggling with since launch. They've had a lot of patches, driver updates that say that they're improving this, but Tom's Hardware has said that they've tested 5 RX 7000 GPUs with this latest driver, and that they say that idle power draw appears to be fixed. This especially happened on high-resolution, high-refresh rate monitors when you're in a multi-monitor configuration. That was when this was worst, and that is what they're testing here. And you can see significant power reductions on the 7800 XT between the two driver versions here are the dark blue and the light blue. RX 7600, 7700 XT, we can see some significant power reductions here. Looks like the 7900 XTX and XT didn't really see much differences, but it looks like they didn't have as much to cut down from as some of these other GPUs did. So very interesting. It's saying, it looks like, let's see, I think it says their PC was connected to a 4K 140 hertz 144 hertz G-Sync monitor. One of AMD's previous workarounds was to enable FreeSync support if available, which it's not on G-Sync displays like X27. So anyway, they go into some of the details on their testing. You can take a look at that. They also say if you start moving the mouse around and things like that and actually doing things, the power usage can go back up. But interesting on that driver update. Now, in other AMD-related news, we are seeing reports of the Ryzen 7 5700X 3D, which has been rumored, is now rumored to release in Q1 of 2024. This is coming from ECSM Official on Twitter. And so we'll have to see if something comes of that. It sounds like this would be pretty similar to the 5800X 3D. Just maybe these chips weren't able to hit those clock speeds. So I'm curious if we'd have wide availability of these at all and what the price point would be and things like that. So curious if we'll end up getting that. Now, in actual official AMD releases, we are seeing AMD's Ryzen 8000 Hawk Point APUs are now officially announced by AMD. And it looks like the main difference between these and the 7000 series APUs seems to be the upgraded XDNA AI Neural Processing Unit, NPU, going up to 16 TOPS of power. So it looks like that is the main difference, because other than that, it seems like they have similar amounts of cores and threads and GPU and all of that compared to the 7000 series. So it really does seem to be the focus on the neural processing unit. Now, they're calling out some differences they have versus Intel. We'll get to Intel's response to that in a minute. But it also looks like AMD is claiming that they'll have, that was the, I think, 8040 series is what we're seeing here. Now we'll be seeing 8050 Strix Point APUs coming later in 2024 with further XDNA 2 NPU updates, apparently claiming AI performance boosts of 3 times the power. So it looks like they're focusing on these XDNA NPUs in their APU refresh for the 8000 series. Also on that topic, AMD is apparently launching their MI300X and AI Accelerator, and they're claiming up to 60% faster. Now, up to usually means at some certain thing in some certain case or whatever, I don't know. But they're claiming that they can be faster significantly than the NVIDIA's H100. I focus on gaming GPUs, not AI GPUs, so make of this of what you will. I don't have a lot to weigh in on that, but they are claiming some big performance gains on those AI accelerators. Now, speaking of NVIDIA and AI acceleration, NVIDIA has been talking about trying to work within, not work around really, but work within the US's restrictions on sending AI GPUs to China. This is where we'd seen things like the 4090D. So NVIDIA wanted to give China the D4090 version, standing for Dragon version, and to cut it down to be within spec of the regulations. We did see mega-sized GPU talking about the base clock and boost clock. Basically, the base clock being higher than the original 4090, boost clock being the same. We seeing maybe losing some cores enough to get it within spec. However, we then saw the Commerce Department from the United States saying if you redesign a chip around a particular cut line that enables them to do AI, I'm going to control it the very next day. Now, so this sounds like it's kind of putting NVIDIA in a difficult spot where it's like, they seem to be trying to work within the guidelines that are being set. But then if you just say, well, we'll just reset the guidelines if you enable them to do AI, I mean, it's like, what does that even mean? Because AI could be done on almost anything. At what level, right? You have to set a certain cut point. So it looks like NVIDIA is trying to respond by saying that, look, they're trying to comply and work with the U.S. government. It looks like the Jensen quote here is, NVIDIA has been working very closely with the US government to create products that comply with its regulations. Our plan now is to continue to work with the government to come up with a new set of products that comply with the new regulations that have certain limits. So the key here is, I mean, at some point there just does have to be an actual limit set that they can then comply with. Otherwise, it's like, what does that even mean, and how can you operate as a business if it becomes continually unclear what exactly the regulations actually are. Anyway, along that note, Chinese NVIDIA board partners are unlaunching their RTX 4090s to make room for the D version of the 4090 that is probably coming out if NVIDIA can get that to apparently comply with the US regulators. Speaking of different versions of NVIDIA GPUs, though, how about the RTX 3050 getting downgraded to a 6 gigabyte version? The original version was an 8 gigabyte model. Now, to go from 8 to 6, it seems like you would also need to be adjusting other things that can affect performance beyond just whether you're running out of VRAM. This is a videocards.com article quoting board channels. Where the quote here is, NVIDIA is planning the latest product adjustment for the RTX 3050 series, the AIC brand, so that's like add-in card manufacturers, add-in board partners, have been informed that there would be a significant adjustment to the RTX 3050 series products. Specifically, NVIDIA will discontinue the production of the RTX 3050 8GB version and directly switch to selling the RTX 3050 6GB version to meet market demands. I'm not sure what those market demands, other than maybe they offer it at a lower price or something like that. I don't know, because I don't think people are demanding less VRAM. According to information from add-in card brand manufacturers, the RTX 3050 8GB version will be phased out as inventory is depleted, and the RTX 3050 6GB version is expected to be available for purchase and potentially on the market by January. So this could be as soon as January, and basically sounds like means no more new 3050 8GB being produced. And they'll switch production over to the 6GB version. Now, again, this is hardly official. This is still leaks and rumors and whatnot. So we'll see what comes of this. If they're really going to make the 3050 even worse, it better come with a massive price cut to make it attractive in any way. Hopefully that's the market demand that they're talking about meeting. In other NVIDIA news, they are celebrating 500 RTX games and apps now out. So RTX basically means either DLSS or ray tracing or both, not necessarily ray tracing. They're basically talking about their RTX card features like DLSS or ray tracing support. There's a lot of stuff going on here. A big infographic we'll look at a bit more in a second. One thing you might want to be aware of is that they do look to be doing $500 Green Man Gaming gift cards as a thing you could take a look at if you want to, participate in that sort of a contest. Now, I was interested in this big infographic they put out, and so they're talking about, okay, do RTX 40 series gamers enable RT or DLSS? And so they're obviously conflating this. Again, they're combining RTX features together. So how many are enabling DLSS? How many are enabling RT? They're not specifying. They're just saying RT or DLSS or both. One or the other or both meets you in this number. It certainly looks like a high number. But again, I think a lot of people are interested in using DLSS, who might not want to take the ray tracing performance hit, that kind of a thing. And also in like Alan Wake 2, for example, that game literally forces you into either a DLSS or FSR rendering pathway. There is no just native TAA. So the fact that this is 99% is then not surprising, because the 1% is just the 1% of people who for some reason chose the FSR pathway on a Nvidia GPU, which would be kind of strange. Maybe they clicked the wrong button or something, or maybe they do prefer the look of FSR. I'm sure that some people are out there. Anyway, so interesting numbers, but again, like Minecraft with RTX. So this is specifically Minecraft RTX. So anyway, so I'm not quite sure what any of this means when you don't separate things out a little bit better. But anyway, they are talking about a whole lot of stuff here. So it is cool to see. I will say it is, to me, a big deal hitting the 500 game support list. Now, some of those are apps, of course, but that is one of the big things, is that DLSS wouldn't be that big of a deal if it wasn't in most new released games, but it is. Like, most games get it to the point where now we get a public outcry if a big AAA game launches without DLSS, and I think most people want it in their game. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the fact that the driver update for, Avatar, and that came with this big announcement and all of that, also apparently had some issues, and they've issued a hot fix for those issues. Apparently there were Discord streaming issues and some occasional VSync stutter, and those have a driver hot fix, which you could download separately if you're experiencing those issues. Now, let's hop over to Intel, who published a slide deck that was very, very interesting in how directly it was attacking AMD, especially with like their naming schemes and things like that. Directly comparing AMD's naming scheme to snake oil, among other things. Now, I was going to talk more about this, but Gamers Nexus put out a video directly just tearing apart this slideshow, so I'll just leave the link here in the video description. But let's just say that if Intel wants to be critical of new chips, newly named chips just being refreshes of old products, why did they launch the 14th gen, Intel? Tell me that. Anyway, in other Intel-related news, we're seeing Samsung Galaxy Book 4 Ultra laptop with Intel Core Ultra 7 155H CPU and an RTX 4050 GPU being sold in China apparently already. That's interesting because Intel's Core Ultra series CPUs shouldn't be out yet. So that's at least interesting. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to have to learn Intel's new naming scheme, because I'm assuming Ultra 7 is similar to our old i7, so this would be high-end. I don't quite know what 155H means yet, so I will have to educate myself on this stuff as it becomes available. Now, we are also seeing that apparently an Acer 2024 laptop lineup, which features Core Ultra 125H and 155H, as well as older, the Core i9s with a 14900HX, is being leaked out, and you could take a look at some of those specs and information. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to some GPU coolers. ASUS is launching a GeForce RTX 4070 Turbo with a blower fan. Now, blower fan designs are often popular in more workstation-focused GPUs, more productivity-focused, where you might want to slot in multiple GPUs for some kind of compute workloads, things like that. And so that's interesting. And we're also seeing GALAX taking an RTX 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte down to a single slot blower style card. And I've always mentioned since it launched that the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte version makes the most sense as a more of a productivity focused card where you need an Nvidia GPU because certain productivity workloads, including AI workloads, oftentimes are programmed best or work best or trained on the NVIDIA CUDA stuff, but oftentimes need more than 8 gigabytes of VRAM like the 4060 Ti had, so jumping up to 16 gigabytes of VRAM is the most VRAM you can get on a 40 series card that isn't a $1,200 4080. So putting it into a single slot blower style card could make you stack up a bunch of these for a lot less money than, stacking up a bunch of 4080s, fit a bunch in a case. Seems kind of interesting. In other cooler model designs, we're seeing MaxSun launching an RTX 4070 with 5 fans, the 3 actual fans and 2 little ones that don't actually really do much. If it's anything like the 40, I think it was a 4080 design that Gamers Nexus did a review and teardown on. For that card, which again is not the same as the 4070 we're seeing here, but had a similar design, It seemed like a well-built card, according to Gamers Nexus. It's just that the two little fans that are kind of the gimmick to make this a 5-fan design didn't really add much to the actual cooling. So other than claiming you have 5 fans, what is it really there for? Now, maybe their 4070 design is different. Who knows? We'll have to see. Visually, they look very similar. And we're seeing AFOX releasing an RTX 4060. And they're definitely a lesser known at this point in time a GPU cooler designer, but I think they used to be a little bit more active, but now only certain models are available with that. Now, let's move into some PC gaming related news. We're seeing Stormgate, which is an RTS inspired by games like Warcraft and Starcraft, apparently hitting big Kickstarter numbers. I also saw an interview with the developer on Digital Foundry where they talked a lot about their technology behind the game, which sounds very interesting. Combining an Unreal Engine 5 implementation with their own custom engine. And honestly, guys, I miss the days when RTS games were huge on PC. I was really into StarCraft and StarCraft 2. And so I'm very interested to see what some former StarCraft developers might do with Stormgate. So interested to see what's going on with that. Now, we've seen the GTA 6 trailer basically breaking the internet with already over 100 million YouTube views, which is the biggest non-BTS video ever for views in its initial launch day. However, no mention of a PC release. Now, I'm sure it'll come to PC eventually, but why not at launch? We had to wait a long time to get Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC, for example. Well, PlayTracker is weighing in on their idea of why it might make sense for Rockstar to delay the PC release, and that could be just to get people to buy multiple versions of the game. You already own the console version. Then a year or two later, a version comes out on PC that could run with higher settings and frame rates. Cool, let's buy that too. According to them, they're saying that 44% of GTA 5 owners own the game on multiple platforms. So that's a lot. If you could literally sell the game again to the same person by just delaying the release on PC, that certainly makes sense from a financial standpoint, even if it's extremely frustrating to the PC gamers out here. But anyway, is that the real reason why it might be delayed? Who knows? But it's certainly interesting and suspicious. Last thing I'll leave you with is it looks like Forza Motorsport has received an update 3, which, while adding a track that I will not try to pronounce, okay, I'll try Hockenheim, it also apparently improves PC performance. Now, I don't have time to dig in to verify these claims, but they're saying that they are fixing random crashes in multiplayer races specifically on PCs with AMD GPUs. They're saying that DLSS will now properly turn on and off in the video settings. When I initially did test this game at launch, it seemed like DLSS was not improving performance the way it should, which made me question whether it was actually activating at all. And apparently it's now, they're at least saying it will properly turn on and off. I'm not measuring the performance to see if it actually has a performance boost now. We'll see. Stability and performance apparently improved on lower spec PCs, improved consistency of frame rate while racing, and then also improved detection of CPUs on PC to set the default quality presets correctly. Anyway, it looks like at least claiming a lot of very nice fixes, because the game was certainly not in really amazing shape when it first launched. And I think that's what I've got for you in today's video. My biggest thing here is I am very interested in looking at this Avatar Frontiers of Pandora with FSR 3 myself when I get it hands-on when the game actually launches. And I'm sure I'll do at least a kind of impressions video. If not, we'll see if I have time to do any detailed analysis. But again, take a look at that computer-based article for a bunch of detailed analysis. And I hope all of you have an excellent day.